We are pleased to bring you the third episode in the History of Smyrna series. Today, we're standing in front of the historic train depot. Built in 1853, this building served as a combined freight and passenger rail house. Smyrna Parks and Recreation acquired this building in 2014, refurbished it, and today it serves as the heart of the downtown depot district. The stories you hear today are part of the fabric of our community. They weave together the past and the present. This is our town and our history. We invite you to enjoy the history of Smyrna.
I'm Coon Victory. I grew up here in Smyrna and I graduated from Smyrna High School and retired from Crosland Supply Company, a local hardware and lumber store here in town. And my co-host, Patsy Brown, and I are going to try to do this once a month, talking about old town Smyrna. And today we have with us four nice people, and we're going to introduce ourselves. And my co-host, Patsy Brown.
Hi, I am Patsy Brown. I actually am from Wilson County. Grew up over there and came to Smyrna when I was 19 and met my husband, who was stationed here at Seward Air Base. So I felt like I finished growing up here because I was a little bit younger then.
I'm Charles Williamson. I've been in Smyrna, about 96 years all my life. My mother, she's about 99 years old, and her knee was hurting her. My daddy took her to the doctor, and he said it's old age. And she said this other leg is the same age.
It's not hurting.
No.
And my name is Lee Barnett. I'm a lifelong resident of Smyrna, of Rock Springs Road. And when I started working for Bridgestone and Laverne, my boss would only call people by their first name. So everybody started calling me Richard down there. So if anybody sees this, I'm the same person. But I'm a lifelong resident of Smyrna and kin to about 200 or 300 people here in town anyway. It seems like everybody's kin to us. We have a family reunion every year, and we have between 125 and 150 people show up. So it's been good.
I'm Mike Mitchell. I was born and raised in Smyrna. There were many generations before me, and I stayed here, love the place. I have a business here. I've been in business across over on the highway there for 35 years. So that's my story.
I'm Jim Ross. I moved here from Old Jellison when I was 10 years old. Been here 68 years now. And I retired from Delta Airlines and also love this town.
Jim, I just realized that you're from Old Jefferson also.
Right.
Did you go to Old Jefferson?
I went to half a year I went to Old Jellison.
Did they kick you out?
Yes.
Okay, so I got to go there 8 years.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was a little bit meaner than you were.
Also, I just realized that you four people have something in common. You know what that is? All four of you were related to the trailer park. Your families had trailer parks. And because there's not as many today as there were back then, but mostly, I guess, they were used mostly by the airmen back when during your days that your family had those things. Also, I'm glad that Mr. Charles Lee is with us today. Mr. Charles Lee is 96 years old, and he gets around real well to be 96. And during his introduction there, we found out Hazelwood Drive, which goes right down the middle of town by the old school, is named after his family. The family that he bought from. And Charles Lee, what year did you come to Smyrna? Do you recall that year?
About 1940.
About 1940. So you've seen it grow up a little bit.
Oh yeah.
And also, you and Jim have something in common with this building.
Correct.
You know what that is?
Both on the fire
The
department.
volunteer fire department. We worked on that. back then. Was the fire department started before you?
You saw the pictures.
I saw the picture there. Was it already started when you became a member?
He was a volunteer for a long time. But W. Carter was the chief then, and then Coon Hart, and then Jack Towns, and then
James Farmer.
Jenny Fox. Yeah.
And today we have Bill Carson,
Yeah.
Jr.
And we got a little bit of pay, $2 or $3 for fires.
I didn't even find.
You weren't as good.
You wasn't good, Jim.
I could have played.
Then, Lee, your family grew up on like Rock Springs Road,
Correct.
which out next to where Collins Square is there today. And your grandmother had a trailer park there. And
Can I give you a little bit of history about it?
yes,
It was started in the early 40s when the base was being built. A lot of construction workers out there had travel trailers, travel to different construction sites.
yes.
Well, they approached my grandfather, wanted to know if he had a place they could park them. So that's how it started. And that was in the early 40s. And we just now sold the property. It's been a trailer park all these years.
So over 60 years, how long has it been there?
Daddy's trailer park got started when the base was here. He built houses. He was a contractor. So the airmen, he built houses for an airman. They lived in the trailers. So they swapped the trailers for a house. So he decided he just started a trailer park.
And that was just Galactic, huh?
That's right. That's how he got started.
You know, those airbase people were the best tenants you could
Yeah.
have. My grandmother saw a need, and people, just moved in for their stint in the military. And so they weren't going to put down roots necessarily forever, so they lived in the trailers, and they were fine people. And they kept that place just perfect. Some really good folks moved through that trailer park, I remember.
Jim, you and I, we go back a little bit, of course, we're third cousins, but we were on a paper route together, and we was mentioning the base, and I remember us carrying papers. Do you recall how much we got paid per paper?
No, I don't.
A penny a paper. We got paid a penny a paper, and I would make about $10 a week. That was when I was in the 7th grade, and I thought that was a lot of money back in that time. All right, Mr. Charles Lee,
Yeah.
back there in those times, was it very many stores? Where did you go to get your groceries here in Smyrna back there when you first, do you recall when you first married?
George Potts had a store there. My daddy worked there. He's a butcher. Then Ms. Moa next door, and her husband, they had a store there. And then Tolliver of a Hilltop, he had a store. And he also had a truck with a bed on it. And they went through the country selling stuff and buying eggs.
That's what the peddling wagon like, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. I recall that he would go up to say Miss Jones's house, and Miss Jones would swap some eggs for some milk or for some gas and those kind of things.
And then right across from Tolliver's was a rock store, and that was Cullen Johnson's daddy and William Peoples. And then underneath it was a garage, and Mr. West worked under it.
And that rock store, is that where they used to catch the bus?
Yeah.
The Greyhound bus?
There's a rock store right across the street.
From Del Farrell's Market.
It was on this side of Smyrna. It was
Yeah.
just on the side of the highway.
During that time, was the main road out here, that was Highway 41 here then? Or do you recall?
Highway 41 was,
Okay,
but the others wasn't.
okay. Did any of you, Lee, you remember any of those places that he just mentioned? You probably mentioned,
I remember the rock store up there.
You remember?
Because I remember it was a garage
Yeah.
he was talking about.
You remember
And they had a rack out beside the building where they would drive the cars up to change oil on. That's one of the
I
things.
remember that myself.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the people's name that had that, but Warwick, Mr. Isaac Warwick, I can recall. Mr.
Charles
Isaac.
Warwick's
Yeah,
family.
a family that had that.
And then right across the road from them, William Carter and Philip Carter grew up.
Right.
They were the ones that, Neil Odom drove our bus. And when he would pick us up at school, we would go up the hilltop and drop them off, and then we would go down to Pendergrass Grocery and turn on Rock Springs and deliver the rest of the people, kids. And then we went up behind Goodall Clinic and picked up probably 15 or 20, including Mike. And that was Neil's bus route.
But now, you mentioned that school. The school was where the library is today, and we call it the Old Rock School. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Shelton, where did you go to school?
I went to Cedar Grove about 4 or 5 years. Then we moved to Smyrna. I don't know if you remember, but the school burned down. The Smyrna school burned down. We saw the smoke from Rock Springs. Anybody remember that?
No.
Now, were you a student there, or was that before you were a student?
It burned down, yeah.
Were you a student at that time, or was it?
No.
That was before you were a student?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We just saw the smoke, yeah.
But, Mike, how did you get to school?
See, being a young pup here, I'm learning stuff from him right now
Exactly.
that I thought I knew a lot about Old Smyrna. That's great to hear that stuff. I rode a bus, that same bus Lee rode, Neil rode. When we lived up on Moore Avenue for a while, you know, our original home place was going outside of Smyrna down there. You know, we talked about where the go-kart track was.
Behind where the old Kmart building.
Where the Kmart building was sitting. But we moved up, and my grandmother had an illness, and we moved up to take care of her for a while, and that's when I caught the bus. We lived up there for a few years, and then went back to our house, you know, down there where the water used to get up.
Jim, how'd
I
you get to school?
couldn't ride the bus. I lived outside the city limits, so I had to walk.
So you walked to school?
Correct.
You walked 10 miles up a hill and 10
Both
miles down?
Both ways.
Oh, wait.
So,
It was, no, it wasn't that far. I could run without ever stopping.
Is that right?
Well, I walked home from school some, you know, we talked about that last time, stop at Moore's Market.
Yes.
You know, just occasionally, I don't like doing that too much, but it didn't seem that big of a deal. You know, walk down Hazelwood and end up downtown, and then cut across and maybe go over to Nick's drugstore and get something from the soda fountain, and then head on home. I can remember doing it.
Oak Street was the end of the city,
Oak Street was the end of the city then. Yeah.
and we were right beside Oak Street.
That Oak Street is going right out Sam Davis Road, just right out past the Methodist and Presbyterian Church, as far as the city limits was in.
well, those Smyrna city limits on this side was at the bridge at Horace Branch.
Right.
As soon as you crossed the bridge, you were out of city limits.
Patsy mentioned grocery stores. Where did you shop? You recall where you shopped for groceries back when you first came to Smyrna, first married?
Well, there was the base, of course, we had the BX over there, but then, what do you call it, PX, whatever it was.
BX is what I always
PX,
call it.
whatever.
Basically.
Post exchange, yeah.
Post exchange. But Cundiff's Market was here. If you wanted to get a bigger store, I know this friend of mine, we would go down to Hills, H.G. Hills, down Murfreesboro Road, you know.
You was in high cotton then, wasn't
I thought, you know. But, you know, we didn't have a Kroger. We didn't have any big grocery chain stores here. And I would shop some at Mr. Moore's, Miss Bessie.
Was the CB store next door here then, or not? Francis Byright?
Not at that.
Not
Yeah,
at that.
yeah, it
Was
was.
it?
Yeah.
You mentioned Cundiff's CB store. Lee, I believe you worked there.
That was my very first job. I was 13 years old, started stacking groceries there, and then I worked there for about 3 or 4 years. And after that, I got a job with Ken Pilkerton. Everybody, I think, knows him, at Western Auto, and I worked there for about 4 years. So
What year?
I got to know everybody in town, and I was telling a few of them earlier, a lot of the people in town had accounts where they would come in during the week, buy groceries, and put it on a little tab. Well, most of the families worked at AFCO or Aladdin or the Lane Company. They would come in on Saturday afternoons and cash their checks and pay their bill. So that's how I learned who everybody was in town. So
Now, how did y'all, do you recall how you marked your merchandise and all that kind of stuff to put on the shelves?
Herbert Cundiff was a great artist. He would, he had these real wide ink pens, and he would do the banners for the front windows, and that's how he marketed his specials. Chicken wings, cut up chickens, steaks, pork chops and stuff like that. He would draw up the signs and put them on the window every week.
Did you have computers back then where you could enter your product or enter your stock?
No, we had an old cash register, and when the electricity went out, we had a hand crank. You'd crank the cash register.
How did you mark your merchandise to put on the shelves?
It came in truck once or twice a week, and Mr. Holland that I was talking about earlier, he was the one that put up all the produce. And back then you didn't have the old mechanical stamp to stamp prices. We had the little rubber stamps that had the individual price on them, and they had to stamp each can. And just trivia.
Man, prices would have to be stuck in almost the same place for a long time to have to make a rubber stamp with the price on it.
Well, he had a rubber stamp with 99 little stickers on them, and they would stamp them on an ink pad.
Interesting.
Lee, what year were you sacking groceries at?
That would have been around 63 or 64.
You might have sacked my groceries.
Probably did.
Did he put the bread on the bottom, Patrick?
I think you did. That's right. I was looking
No,
for
sir.
the one that did that.
Or the eggs?
Yeah.
We had, usually on Saturday afternoon, you could expect certain people to come in at a certain time. And one of the people that came in and used to work for Ridley Chevrolet, and I don't know if any of you remember, his name was G.C. Arnold.
Oh, yes. He drove the wrecker.
Wrecker for him. He would come over, he and his wife Sarah would come over every Saturday afternoon about 2 o'clock and get their groceries. Of course, he just lived right across the street. He had a 60 Chevrolet Impala, red and white. And that's the only time I ever saw it move, was when he would drive from the house to the grocery store and back home. But real neat.
You mentioned Miss Sarah Arnold. I tell you a little tale about me and Miss Sarah Arnold. The first time I met Miss Sarah, I was a sophomore at Smyrna High School, and back then, when school started, you would take schedules of the football, the little
Put them in the window.
12 or 16, and put them in the windows. And so Mr. McWilliams, who was the principal, asked me and Johnny, Jim's brother, to go and deliver them downtown. And so here we go up down this street, and right next door was a local watering hole, and Miss Sarah worked in there. So I walk in there, and when I walk in, she said, "What are you doing in here, boy?" Well, it scared me to death. I didn't know what. I said, "Ma'am, I'm just putting up a poster for Mr. Mack for football." "Well, come right on in here, honey." She set me right up there at the bar. She said, "What do you want to drink?" I said, "Give me a Coca-Cola." So John and I got to drink a Coca-Cola, and that was my first run-in with Miss Sarah Arnold.
They were nice people.
Oh, they were great people.
That's typical Smyrna, though. Just like she was watching out, wanted to know what you were doing in there. And I ran into that throughout my whole life. I thought I was either related to everyone, or they knew my family and my grandparents. And I just felt like people were watching over us all the time. We could live and be young and mischievous, but as long as we didn't cross that line,
You got watched over quite a bit when you went in Western Auto, didn't you?
Absolutely.
Tell them the story.
If I remember it correctly, I'd go in there and look around at the bicycle stuff. I was really young. I was bicycle riding age. And I'm looking at reflectors and mud flaps and stuff. And I believe Ken sent one of y'all over there, or was he the one? No, he came over and was watching me real careful. And I think I just told him outright, "You don't have anything in here that I'd steal." you don't have to watch me, And from then on, we were fast friends after that.
Mr. Charles Lee, do you recall when we had our first policeman here in town?
First policeman, Caseman Edmundson. You remember him?
I heard the name. I assume he walked the streets. Did he walk, or did he have a car?
He just stood around the city hall.
Oh, stood around City
Fire
Hall.
department, yeah. I saw him shoot a guy too, yeah.
My first memory was Mr. Chief Joner
Chief Joyner and Bell Sellers.
and Bell Sellers. Yes.
And then later, Mr. Beatty. Yeah. And we knew all them, They knew us. And you'd have to, I think I told you this once, you'd have to do something significant to get in trouble with those guys. If you were a lifelong resident of Smyrna, you'd have to be pretty bad to get in trouble with the police. And they told us more than once, especially when we got older and got motorcycle riding age like Lee and I did. They said, boys, we're not going to chase you. So if you act up on those motorcycles, we're going to be sitting in your driveway talking to your dad when you get home.
He knew where you lived.
And they didn't have any interest whatsoever in getting you in any kind of trouble that would stick to you. They just watched over you and they'd tighten you up every once in a while. Good people.
Jim, who's your first memory of the police department?
I guess it would be Sellers.
Sellers and Jonah, yeah. Lee? Yeah. Pat, you recall those people?
Yes,
Yeah.
I remember Mr. Joyner for sure, Chief Joyner.
Charles Lee, you were at the Lane Cedar Mill a long time.
37 years.
37 years, and the Lane Cedar Mill is across the street where they're getting ready to build some new apartments right next to the old, what we call the old city hall, and is home of the fire department for today. And exactly how did you get your cedar, and what did you do with the cedar once you got it?
Okay. The real Lane company is up to Alabasta, Virginia. So around here is a cedar belt, cedar forest. So Mr. Nance, he went out and bought cedar. And Bill Steele, you remember him? Yes. He bought cedar, and they truck it in. We had a bunch of trucks that bring it in. So.
And then I assume you would cut it?
Yeah, they had a sawmill, about 30 guys out there. Seth Britton and a York boy, a bunch of, I think James Farmer, he was a foreman out there.
So James worked there at the cedar mill?
Yeah,
Okay.
he worked I worked over in the plant.
But now I recall little cedar chest. Did y'all make anything there?
No, we shipped everything by rail, trucks and railroad up to Alabasta. They cut the lumber and planed it, and we glued it together like a cedar chest, and that's about how it was.
Did you have forklifts and things back then to load up, or did you have to load it by hand?
Say what?
Did you have forklifts to load it on the box car, or did you have to do it by hand to load the lumber?
No,
or a conveyor belt, or you recall?
No, it was already glued together, panels. So we had a conveyor belt.
Conveyor belt that ran it up there, and then you stacked it on there.
Lane Company sent Pat Patterson and
Johnny Brandon?
Johnny Brandon down, yeah. And then there's another man, about Reggie, yeah.
Now, you said you worked there 37 years. Was Lane Cedar Mill already in operation when you first started?
Yeah, Lane Company and the old creamery up Murfreesboro was the only two factories in Rutherford County.
And you said you worked about 30 people there. Yeah. Go ahead, Patsy.
Pat Patterson became the manager of the Lane Company, didn't he?
Yeah.
Here. Were you there? You were there then?
Yeah.
Okay.
See, we had two. Johnny Brandon was before Pat.
Okay.
And then
Did both of those come from Virginia here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So did
Both of them married Colemans.
Yeah, both of them married Colemans.
And Reggie-
stayed here, very prominent.
So did Reggie Pearson, came from there, but he married Blanche. Blanche was, I can't remember. We'll have to figure that out.
Did y'all have any connections to the Lane Cedar Mill? I didn't have any family members working. You did?
I lived right beside it.
Oh, you lived right beside it, yeah. I can recall going in there with my dad. My dad was an electrician and plumber, and he worked on things over there.
Oh yeah, he was a good electrician. We had big machinery, 400 watt, and he'd wire everything up. He was good.
I recall going in there with him when I was a young lad, and I saw that big saw blade, and that blade was probably 7 or 8 feet wide and tall. It was huge, and when I walked in that door, somebody put their hand on me just like this here. This is as far as you going, young fella, because of the safety reason there. But that's what I remember, going in there and seeing that big saw blade.
There wouldn't have been any OSHA back then,
Oh, there
would
wasn't
there?
been no OSHA, no, back then.
We talked about this a little bit last time, Mr. Charles Lee, but what about when there was a whistle, there was a steam whistle that blew?
Yeah, yeah.
What time, tell us about that.
I think maybe 5 minutes to 7 and 7 o'clock and 11:30 for dinner and 12 and then at 4:30. Yeah.
So 3
You could hear it.
times.
Yeah, you could really hear it.
You could
yeah.
hear it. You sure could. Yeah. You could hear that, and you could hear the bass when the sirens went off, calling those guys to come.
Or the one here too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's
Yeah,
true.
you could hear that stuff really plain. I
You
remember
could.
that siren at the base, alert.
Yes. Yes, alert.
And those guys would take off out there. And we always wondered why. I did anyway.
This siren on this building,
Yeah.
it blew for 3.5 minutes.
Is that how long it was?
And most of the time we was already gone when it quit blowing.
And then you came from either work or home, what you did, yeah.
Or wherever. I think I told this last time, but I remember being at Walden's barbershop getting a haircut. And one of the volunteer firemen, I don't remember which one at the time, was in the chair getting a haircut. And that siren went off and he ripped that cup right in the middle of his haircut and got up and went out and went and, I guess he came back later and got finished getting trimmed up. You know?
Jim, how many fire trucks did we have then?
One.
Just had one? Yes. Did it belong to the city of Smyrna? Was it donated by the base, or do you recall? Belonged to the city of Smyrna. But I recall, I mentioned that I lived out at Old Jefferson, and when I was in the 7th grade, our house caught on fire, and the Seward Air Base brought the trucks there to put it out.
They were allowed to go out of the city.
Yeah.
Where we weren't.
Yeah, and I remember that. Yeah. Do y'all recall where our first drive-in market was, and who had it?
I think it was directly across from Western Auto Building.
That's my memory.
And there was
Yeah.
Herbert Gunner's father-in-law, Mr. S.P. Patterson.
No, PH
P.S. Patterson
and PH.
started it. And then I think Greg Bowers has a lot of information on the Smyrna website. I think his dad ran it after Mr. Patterson gave it up.
But I believe it stayed open all night, didn't it?
Yeah, they also had aquarium supplies in there.
For a while they did, and they had a cricket box out front. You could go get you a tube of crickets and go fishing. It was a crazy place. I went there a lot.
But talk about Mr. Patterson. I recall that he had a swimming pool at his house, and there wasn't very many back then. I don't know how many people had swimming pools, but his grandson and I were buddies, and I got to go swimming over there because of his grandson. Yeah, and then I can recall later, across from where you lived, Mr. Lonnie, that Mr. Howard Coleman had a swimming pool.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I don't know if anybody else had swimming pools.
Mr.
Wasn't there a
Patterson.
swimming pool at the,
His was a
wasn't
house,
there one
yeah.
at the Cheney house?
Yes,
Cheney
the
House.
Cheney House.
Cheney House had one?
Yeah.
Mr. George Gwynn out on Rock Springs had a swimming pool.
Mr. Patterson had a swimming pool.
And Kathy's dad.
Big Bob. Yeah, Robert. Well, I called him Bob, but yeah, they had one up on the hill up there.
Jim, you mentioned earlier about your father pouring concrete out at the base and then later on building homes. You built a lot of homes for, back then, Smyrna Hardware, which was, you mentioned Mr. Johnny Brandon had already left the Lane Cedar Mill, and he had married into the Coleman family, I assume, and he went to work with his dad-in-law, is that correct?
Right, oldest school.
So where were these houses, the subdivisions built?
Subdivision across from the Omni Hut, which is Highland House. That's one. And Riverview was another subdivision.
And Riverview is out past Smyrna Elementary School on the right-hand side, is that correct?
Correct.
Wasn't this one up here the first one that Ridley's built? Meadowbrook.
Was
that the
Meadowbrook before?
first? Was that about the same time?
Pretty close to the same time, I guess.
Early 60s, maybe mid 60s.
Yeah. But about how many homes, do you recall approximately how many homes y'all built back then?
No.
I'd probably say 200 or 300 at least.
I know that Daddy said that they built it for $10 a square foot.
Mr. Ross built my house and my brother's house right next to me.
On Hazelwood there.
Yeah,
About what year was that?
about 1940.
About 1940. How did your dad pick up carpentry, do you recall? Was that was in the family, wasn't it?
Well,
His aunt, uncle?
Mr. Mayfield
Okay.
raised Daddy,
Mm-hmm.
and he was a carpenter. So, and Daddy built Christiana High School. That's where he met Mama. She was 15 years old when he built Christiana High School. And later on they got married, and his uncle was a carpenter, and that's how he learned his trade.
It was a great big lumber yard, like from a hardware store going down that street. That was a big lumber yard. People went there and got the wood all the time.
Yes. You mentioned building Christiana Elementary School.
Christiana
High school then. Also, didn't he build the city hall where the fire departments?
He is now, yes.
Yes.
And Team Chevrolet.
Team Chevrolet?
It was Ridley Chevrolet.
Yeah. So your family was in the commercial building and the home building also. I can recall where we got our gas was at service stations, what we called them back then. And the one that I went to most of the time was Lee's Esso, because it was right across the street from where I worked. Do y'all recall what they did for you when you pulled up to get gas?
Sure, they checked wash your windshield and check your oil and check the air of your tires. Full service.
And they put the gas in for you, didn't they?
And all that for $1 worth of gas sometimes. I remember it well. I did it actually. I worked at the American station in Smyrna for Tom McGlone when I was in high school.
Where was it located, Mike?
Right next door to Western Auto. And I can remember I'd see one of the guys from Western Auto walking over there with 4 tires that they just sold somebody. And I remember going, oh, here we go, I got to change 4 tires. But they worked together, you know. But that was a full service gas station.
Hey, Jim, for entertainment, you know what the main thing was around?
What was that, Mr. Lyon?
It was a dance hall at Old Jefferson.
I heard about that.
Every Saturday night, it was a full house. The Ridleys and Earl Coleman and Walter Hoover, it's just a bunch of...
But I understand a lot of people came out of Nashville also, is that correct?
And then there's a bowling alley right across from the dance hall, yeah.
Mr. Williamson?
Yeah.
Do you ever remember going over to the USO?
Yeah.
Over on Oak Street?
No, I don't. I remember being there, but no, I don't remember it.
My mother and Marlo told stories about when it was a USO.
Yeah.
They would go there to dances at the Cheney House.
Did they have cabins at Old Jefferson too?
Yeah, Ms. Awood. Yeah, Reggie Pierce and I rented a cabin back in the back, and we had a boat and we fished all the time. Ms. Edwards had a bunch of cabins back there. Knox and Sam had a house back there. Yeah.
But the lake took all of that, didn't it? I mean, took.
That was a going place.
It must have been.
They had a bowling alley,
Yeah.
dance hall,
Yeah.
roller rink,
Restaurant. Yeah.
restaurant, hotel, and I don't remember, but they said they had a big slide that ran from the bluff down to the river.
That was before the lake came in. You know, the river. The river was a good place to swim.
Was that Stones River?
Yeah. They had a diving platform out in the middle of the river.
Yeah.
They had a big, right in the middle of the river, they had a big concrete where you could swim out there and jump off.
That was your diving board.
Yeah. And then there's a great big bridge going across the river. And I got my flying lessons, and Warren Akins, I was flying, and I thought I'd get them off the concrete, so I couldn't move them. So Warren Akins, he was a good pilot. He made general in World War II. He flew the plane under the bridge, and boy, they start diving.
He cleared them off there, huh?
Under the bridge, yeah. He was good.
Talk about Warren Aiken. He and my dad had a flying school at the old Sky Harbor,
Uh-huh.
and they taught flying
Yeah,
lessons.
Sky Harbor, yeah.
Sam Barnes Coleman, I think, was in with them, and he took flying lessons and ended up crashing an airplane.
Who was that?
Sam Barnes,
Oh, yeah.
and ended up crashing an airplane, and then he got out of it. So,
That kind of trampled the urge, wouldn't it?
Yeah. You mentioned pilot. I didn't realize you were a pilot.
Yeah, I got my license.
You got your license?
At Sky Harbor. Sky Harbor.
Now, Sky Harbor is up on the old highway, about halfway between Smyrna and Murfreesboro.
It was a bunch of us flew when we got out of the Army. That's how I used my money up. Yeah, they'd fly up Rock Spring, up at Rocky Fork, and run Mr. Shelton's horses back to the barn. They had a lot of fun, yeah.
Where, you telling some tales now. Where did you land your planes? Would you take off and land at the air base then?
No,
or where,
Sky Harbor.
Oh, Sky Harbor had out in the field?
Yeah, it was a dirt driveway.
Okay.
Dirt,
I think they have one up towards Walt Hill today.
they do.
You mentioned flying. Also, you played golf a lot.
Oh, yeah, we played golf.
Yeah.
Jim Ross, he knows about it.
Jim, did you ever beat him?
Probably.
Probably.
I was a little bit younger than he was.
Yeah.
We played 2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah. Oh, well, good.
Yeah, we had a bunch of Paul Irvin and a bunch of people.
You know what Mr. Charles Lee used to do?
What's that?
When you remember coming over when we lived at the Mingle House, and you come over there and look for golf balls.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah,
back then you could walk out, you know,
Yeah, he was
down,
right
down
close.
that way. Danny and Bill and Bill's dad, they get down there in the creek and find golf balls.
That's right.
Buckets.
I used to do that.
Did you?
But then somebody put up a sign right there on the bridge, rattlesnakes.
Oh yeah.
That's not anything anymore.
Yeah.
That was a guy that was collecting golf balls, didn't want you in there competing with him.
Exactly.
That's who put that up.
I recall Charles Lee mentioned about Lane Cedar Mill and the creamery place in Murfreesboro were a couple of places you could work. Then you mentioned Firestone coming on. Where other places did we have here where the local? I remember Avco. A lot of people went to Avco.
Greer.
Ladden. Greer. Yeah, you mentioned Greer.
Greer.
Yeah.
Bull T.
Full tea.
Yeah. But Greer Stop Nut, which is right across the street from where our post office is today, but that worked, employed quite a few people also.
Did. I knew some folks that worked there.
Also, we mentioned the places where people lived. Medalone Home. You recall the Medalone Home? I don't know what year that was built. Lee, you or Charles Lee remember about when the...
I don't know when they were built, but I lived there when I was 2 years old. And then my mother and dad built the house where my sister has the quilt shop.
So what year were you 2 years old?
51.
So it was there in the 50s.
It was there in 49.
49.
I've got pictures of Mary and Ann,
Yeah.
my sister's there, and that would have been about 46 or 7. So
Was that built for the airmen at Seward Air Base, a place for them to live?
well, most of them lived there.
Yeah.
Most everyone that lived there was in the military, but I remember Benton Dickerson, his wife lived there for a long time. And,
God, there are lots more. I can't
I
bring them.
remember the health department being down there. We had to go there to get our shots for the health department each year. And of course, the Little League field that was behind the health department over there, we played Little League there. So
We mentioned the Medalone. My first memory of the manager there was Miss Dora Carter. Do y'all recall who was there before her? And then Sam Bonds Coleman, I believe, managed it after Miss Dora Carter. Do you recall who managed the Medalone home, Mr. Lonnie?
it was Sam Barnes.
Managed what?
The Medalone home.
Then Ms. Green.
Was it a Miss Green before
I think
Miss
Ms.
Dora?
Green did.
Yeah,
Marcus Green.
Yeah.
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 I was going to say, when you mentioned stores where I would have shopped, when was P&B? When did P&B Market come in? Because
That was after they closed Califerro's, I
Yeah,
guess, probably,
yeah.
wasn't
I
it?
think they were both still open because Tommy Floyd ran P&B.
Yeah.
Right.
He also drove the grocery truck
Uh-huh.
for Califerro when he lived on Morgan Street
Yeah.
across from my grandmother. She would buy groceries off the truck.
Martha Ann Morgan, RV's wife, would talk. RV, that was, I think, maybe his first job with Tommy, and they called it the rolling store.
Right.
And when I was a child, the peddlers, what we called it, and that was a big day when the peddler came. But that was one of the jobs at RV. I think maybe his first job, and they called it the rolling store. But I remembered buying from Tommy when he opened P&B Market, and he'd always need a check cashed. He'd cash my check, or I'd write a little,
You could cash a check there.
Oh yeah, he cashed a check for me. I would tell him, maybe $3 or $4, but
Had a lot of money back then.
oh yeah.
I got one coon, somebody we haven't talked about that I held in high regard.
Who's that?
Turner Peebles.
I was.
They had the shoe shop, on Hager. And I tell you what, I took shoes over there and had them repaired, because you save up $16 for a pair of Weegians. You're going to wear them till they fall apart. It took me a long time to save that money up, but we'd get them half soled and new heels put on them at Turner's shop. The most interesting person to talk to, and the way it worked, you always had to talk to him. Because if you took your shoes over there and dropped them off, he'd say, come back Thursday. I'll have them ready. So you'd come in Thursday, and I said, Turner, I'm here to pick up my shoes. And he'd go, well, which pair were they? Can you spot them in that case? You'd point them out to him, and he hadn't done them. So he'd get them, and he'd do them right then while you wait. But the good part about it was you got to listen to him talk. He's very intelligent, very interesting. I cherished every one of those times of going over there to pick my shoes up at Turner's Shoe Shop.
I enjoyed the odor of the.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
It smells so good.
And he put that polish and stuff on with his hands. He tint those soles and stuff. You can use rags and stuff. Just take time. But a master shoe repairman.
Mr. Turner Peebles, was he from Smyrna?
Who's that?
Mr. Turner Peebles that ran the shoe shop.
Oh yeah. He'd tell you who his daddy was.
But I remember, like you said, Mike, he was very intelligent.
I thought so. And interesting, up on current events, had certain political views. Not too deep, but interesting to hear.
Can we talk a little bit about Sam Ridley?
Okay, sir.
World War II, he and Knox, they all did fight a long time. Both of them got battlefield commissions, and you remember Jim Aiken? He lived across from you.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
He was a bombardier, and he got shot down, and Sam Ridley's squad went in and rescued him. Did y'all know that?
I didn't know that.
They went in and rescued him, yeah.
No, I didn't know that at all.
And
my dad was.
And Sam Ridley was the most decorated guy in maybe Tennessee or Rutherford County. I forget. I had the article in the paper, but I couldn't find it when I got ready to come over here. But he was really decorated. He was a major.
And we talk about Sam Ridley, who later became the mayor of our town here for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And then the main drag coming into Smyrna is named after Sam. And you mentioned Knox. They were twins.
Oh, yeah.
They were twins, and they were partners with Mr. Earl Coleman.
Yeah, they bought some land, Meadowbrook. Yeah. And built houses and sold them to all the big shots at the air base. Major Prindle, Colonel Rice, and he named all the streets after those guys. So they made a lot of money that way.
I remember Sam Knox had the classic cleaners,
Mm-hmm.
where Carpe Cafe is. And Earl had his office in that building with it. He sold insurance, I believe.
You talk about Mr. Earl Coleman selling insurance there next where the pawn shop is. I worked across the street at Carlson Supply Company there, and I'd walk over to get the mail because the post office was there. And I walked right by Mr. Coleman's office one morning, and the door was open. And Esther and I had just married, and we lived at Hilltop over there next to Teleferro's Market, right next to that, where that little white house is today. And so I walked by there, and he says, "Coon, come in here a minute." So I went in, and I sat down. I didn't have any idea what he wanted. He said, "Do you have any insurance on your house up there, your contents?" I said, "No, sir." I said, "I don't own the house, and everything that was in there was given to me." He said, "Well, we need to have a little insurance on the contents just in case you have a fire." I said, "Okay, sir." He said, "I tell you what I do. I'm going to write up a policy, and then tomorrow morning you come back by here and you sign the policy." I said, "Well, how much is it going to be?" He said, "I don't know. I'll let you know in the morning." So that's the kind of people that work. After I signed. But what I'm getting at, the people looked after each other then because he knew that I didn't realize that I needed insurance. And so he was going to let me know that I needed insurance. And so I appreciate it.
Coon, I mentioned the mayor. Your daughter does a fantastic job.
Well, thank you very much.
I think so too.
She's good.
She really enjoys it. She wishes that she could be down here 24 hours a day.
Yeah, 24 hours a day.
It maintains that connection that we have with old Smyrna. I like that, and that's another good reason to support her.
And this is old Smyrna over here.
Yeah. I'm getting old.
Yeah, getting older.
We didn't talk about doctors in Smyrna. Dr. Ship and Dr. Larry, they made house calls, delivered babies. And then
Don't leave out George Goodall.
I believe where City Hall is now used to be a hospital. Anybody remember that? And then
it did.
Smyrna.
Yes, sir, you're
Smyrna
right.
Hospital.
It was the Smyrna Hospital.
Dr. Pinto came in, and then Dr. Goodall made a clinic up there. And my daughter Vicky, she had her tonsils taken out. I don't know if she know up at Goodall Clinic.
Goodall Clinic?
Yeah.
And that was located right down close to where Mike's family was raised.
It was built on my grandmother's farm. That
Is that
property
right?
would belong to them before Goodall Clinic. She sold it to Dr. Goodall.
And then those houses, we talked about house building earlier, Jim, about your family. Mr. Frank John's family built most of those houses. Green Acres built that back there then. And they were some nice homes. In fact, I think that's where Patsy lived at one time. Was your first home in Smyrna?
It was.
You had a brand new home to start off with?
No, it wasn't brand new. No, it wasn't brand new. But I tell you the story about it. Of course, we didn't have any money, and Bill had gotten a job at Ford, making $100 a week, and we thought we were going to be on it big time. Sure enough, so we came. Friends of ours lived down on Martha Street, and he called and said, "Wish you all to come up." We had just gotten back here from our California jaunt. He said, come and look at this house, it's for sale. And so long story short, we went and bought it. It was $13,500. 3 bedrooms, 2 full baths, garage, corner lot on the corner of Carter and Mitchell. Mike,
I know exactly.
you know which one it was? Yeah. Little red brick house. Sure. Well, we went to, we couldn't qualify for that loan. So, I mean, the full thing. Murfreesboro Federal Savings and Loan. Remember that? Well, it turned out that we were going to owe it. It was going to be $100 a month or something like that. And so they would only qualify us for $80. And Mr. Frank, Sr., he said, "I tell you what I'll do." He said, "I'll pick up that other $20. I forget what kind of a loan that's called. I've still got
mortgages, I think.
What?
Second mortgage.
Second mortgage, something like that. I've still got to, save everything. I've still got those 2 little books. And so we went to Murfreesboro and signed the papers and everything. I think it was at Sellers. And so coming down the road, Bill was driving. He didn't say a word. He was so quiet. And I said, what's the matter? He said, "We'll never live to pay that off. We will never live to pay that note." And I said, "We'll make it somehow." So, we were there and then we moved across the street.
Yeah.
to another one.
I can recall our first house. We lived, like I said, lived up at Hilltop, that little block house. And then after Esther was teaching school at Thurman Francis, and one of her teaching buddies lived down on Bain Drive, and she had a nice home there. So a house across from them came vacant. And so they told, she told Esther, and so Esther and I went and looked at it. And we kind of liked the way it looked at 213 Bain Drive, and but the house payments was $75 a month, and I thought, Lordy mercy, I'm not sure whether we can pay $75 a month. So we kind of got some money together, and we bought that house, and that's where Marist and Leanne were born. We stayed there for 17 years, and then we moved up. We were next door neighbors to Patsy. But I can recall $75 a month is what we paid for.
Well, you knew nothing better happened to your job.
That's right.
You knew everything better go well, and
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah, to make that cover that payment every month.
Do you recall your first house, Jim?
Yes. It's where Dr. Pinto's office was
Uh-huh.
at Enid Springs Road.
Mm-hmm.
It belonged to Mr. Hoover.
Mm-hmm.
It was one bedroom, I think. You could touch all four walls just about. And it was on the hill. I had to park the car on the hill because we couldn't afford a battery for the car. So to go to work, I had Gene to push me a little bit.
Get it started?
Get it started. When I got to work, I had to park it on the hill where I could get back home. It was the good old days.
Does anybody remember Smyrna used to have a horse show every year? And people from they had a steeplechase, and people from Nashville would come in and race through it. And Carlisle Felder, they had some good walking horses, and they had a prize. These walking horses would start in the morning and walk to Lebanon and come back.
Lord have mercy.
So that was pretty good.
Wow.
Now that was that out at Nice's Mill back then?
No, I believe it's like going down to, it's on the left-hand side.
It's off Florence Road, isn't it?
Florence Road.
Florence Road?
No.
Across the river?
No.
Arrowhead
That's
Farm.
Nice's Mill. That's Arrowhead Farm.
That's Arrowhead Farm. That's where
Yeah.
they had the horse shows.
That's where.
Steeplechase, I'm not sure about.
No.
But while you thinking about that, you mentioned horse show. I remember when I was a member of the Lions Club, and you were at the Lions Club, we had the horse show, and it was over by Nice's Mill, where you mentioned Arrowhead Farm, and that was one of our fundraisers, was the Lions Club horse show.
Yeah, I have it right here. I rode a pony in the horse show. A long time ago.
Did you win a prize?
I don't remember. I don't know. You want to look at that?
Yes, I do.
How did you and Miss Margie meet?
Say what?
How did you and Miss Margie meet?
I worked at the VA in Nashville, and she worked there too.
Oh, okay. So, was she from Nashville?
No, she was in Waynesboro.
Waynesboro.
Yeah.
Okay. The depot was, I can recall when trains would stop there and drop off the mail. And I don't know, was it ever a passenger place? It was a passenger place? The depot. Could you catch a train at the depot? Do you recall those days?
They'd hang a basket out, and the depot train would come by and pick it up.
Yeah, they'd snag it off there sometimes, not even stop.
For the mail?
Yes, they had a hook, they'd hang the bag on it. The rail car caboose, I guess maybe, would snag the bag and keep on going.
Yeah.
But you couldn't catch the train there to go somewhere?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah.
Ticket off, they had a ticket counter and everything inside the old depot.
His pony was named Lady.
Lady. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And this cow got out, and the train ran over her. Disaster.
Yeah.
I can recall we had a real bad car wreck there. I was going to talk about that.
I remember hearing about it.
Yes. Was that when it was, 57? Yeah.
December the 27th, 1957.
Is that when it was?
Oh, really?
Jim, no.
What happened?
That's the day Paul Johns got married. That's the reason I remember. My brother was in the wedding or something. He was coming home, and it happened. And he come on home and said there's a bad wreck downtown.
Were they leaving a football game, coming down?
I don't know where they'd been. It was
They were leaving a football game, that's what I understood, and they were trying to beat the train across the tracks, and it brought a T-boned them, and killed all 4 passengers.
Who did he kill?
People that you knew.
Killed 4
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
One of the girls lived at the trailer park.
Is that right?
One was Donald Ray Steele.
Well, he mentioned Bill Steele. It was his son.
Yeah.
Then I can recall one time we had, more than one time, we had the train ran off the track. One of the time was right behind our store over at Crawls and Supply. Then I recall another time right on, before you get into Laverne, down on the left-hand side by the overpass.
And up there by the Singer building.
By the Singer building, yes. It was loaded with coal there, wasn't it? Yes.
People would come by there with sacks and dig coal for years.
Really?
They left it.
Do you remember Smyrna had a big restaurant one time right at the corner of Goodwill, right there? They named it Ponderosa.
Yes, sir.
That
It was a
was
steakhouse.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, sir. Lee, anything that we haven't covered that you would like to mention? Any of the stores that you traveled or worked?
We were mentioning gas stations.
Yes.
At one time, within about 3 blocks, there were 7 gas stations. There was Esso, Gulf, Amoco, Texaco across the street.
Yeah.
There's Phillips 66 that Paul Johnson and ran.
Down there close, getting toward my house.
The Gulf station had the bus stop, Greyhound bus stop in
Yes.
it.
Was it the service center at that time too or not?
Service center was behind Donut Palace originally.
Oh, I thought that's where the Gulf station was too. Where
It
the
was
Gulf-
behind the Gulf station.
Okay.
Smyrna Service Center.
Okay.
The Gulf station was right where the Donut Palace is.
Yes.
Yeah, it had a canopy out there, the bus would drive up and the people would go out. So the ones that worked in Nashville would come out there and catch the bus to go to Nashville to work. But Service Center burned probably early 60s, mid 60s, and then Lyle Hodge and Fred Johnson built the one up here by the old post office. So that's how it's Joe B's Furniture now.
You mentioned the bus stop and everything. Also, there was Wishy-Washy. Knox ran the Wishy-Washy right next to where the dry cleaners is today. And when Esther and I first married, we lived up at Hilltop. We didn't have a washer and dryer. Every Friday night, that's where we would stay. We would stay right there till we washed and washed and dried our
That thing
clothes.
stayed open 24/7. You could go in there in the middle of the night. I remember doing that to avoid the crowd, you know. And I was a musician at the time, and those late hours suited me fine. So.
Has anybody mentioned Bright Spot?
Bright Spot Restaurant, okay.
It was owned by Walter Loggins, is that correct?
Yes.
And he also owned Terry's
Drive-In. That was a hangout spot during our day.
During y'all's
Terry's
day.
Drive-In up at the Hilltop where Carlot is today.
If you're going in the woodshed over there, where all the little cedar things are nailed on the wall, I nailed those on the wall.
Oh, you did? Y'all built
Jordan Walls.
We done that remodeling.
Remodeling for-
But made
Hay baler room.
I remember the hay baler room. They had, should I tell this? They had yard beer glasses. I'd never seen anything like that before. And yeah, that was an unusual thing though. I mean, it was just a novelty, you know. Yard and half yard beer glasses you could get. And I just remember seeing them there.
Mr. Charles, how long were you in the service?
3 years.
3 years in the Air Force.
Yeah.
Okay. And primarily you were stationed in India and Burma during that time?
Yeah, mostly. Yeah.
Most of that time.
Yeah, when I got in, they sent me to Miami Beach, and we did our drilling over where they made the movie and Gone with the Wind.
Oh, okay, okay.
And we lived in the big hotels right on the river. And we shined mirrors all the time, glass. And then I went to Boston and stayed there about a year. And I was in a big hotel there. And I did radio work up in the building, talking to airplanes. From there, I went to Norfolk and took a trip to India. Yeah.
Yeah, lots of the men from Smyrna, you know, answered the call during World War II, and I feel like I just got to mention that my father, Fred Mitchell, was a B-17 pilot, flew 33 missions over Germany in World War II, and then came back and was an instructor pilot on B-29s at MacDill Field in Florida. And then went back to work. You know, he answered the call, did his duty, just like he did. And then he went back to work at Triangle Printing Company in Nashville and raised 4 children.
And then one of your brother was in the service also.
Freddie was served in the Army during the Vietnam conflict and was killed in action in 1968.
How long had he been in?
Not long.
Not long.
I don't remember exactly, but not long.
Was he drafted or did he volunteer?
He volunteered.
He volunteered.
Do you know Mr. Walls? He was at Pearl Harbor when the Japanese bombed it.
I didn't remember that. I didn't.
He and another guy got an airplane to try to chase him down, but didn't do it good.
And then Mr. Walls, he had the woodshed at one time, and then he was up at the Omni Hut. Everybody came from everywhere to eat at the Omni Hut.
Well, then when the base closed, he took the Officers Club and turned it into the Smyrna Country Club. And then that was successful for a while. You know, they had a real nice pool out there.
Mike's anything we haven't covered that you'd like to cover?
Man, I could go on for weeks, but we can't do that. You know, like talking about your dad. You know, I saw your dad many times my whole life. You know, my grandmother had that trailer court. Mr. Lee was over there. He could fix anything, do anything. And again, a great personality. I felt like I just knew him real well. And I'd follow him around and watch him do stuff. And he was good about it, showing me. And I had my favorite memory of Mr. Lee back when I was young. This old pickup truck that he drove. And the bed of that thing was loaded with every part, spare part, piece of a pipe, wire, you name it. And I believe it was sitting on the bump stops. There was so much weight in that bed of that truck. But man, 9 times out of 10, he had everything he needed, and he knew it was in there.
He knew where it was.
And go get it.
Yes.
There was not a square inch.
That amazed me.
Exactly.
That amazed me as a child. But
I've got one story to tell about your dad.
Oh, yes.
When he used to come out to the trailer park and do electrical work, my grandmother would meet him at the back door, tell him what to do and everything. First thing she would do was grab his glasses off. Mr. Lee, I don't see how you can see through those. And she would clean his glasses for him. And he had ulcers real bad.
Yes.
And every now and then he would come to the back door and knock up, Miss Lee, could I get a glass of buttermilk?
Yeah.
My ulcers are acting up. And she would give him a glass of buttermilk. So that's one memory I have of him.
we can share memories. That stuff will come back as you go.
That's what we're trying to do here.
Well, then we got to talk about the family. Boys, rabbit, coon, and I don't know why come EA got to be EA. You know,
he was daddy man.
You know, he didn't get a good nickname like y'all did. You know, but that's
Your oldest brother.
Billy.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I was just going to people closer to my age that I remember.
Jim, anything that we haven't covered that you think we need to cover? No. Mr. Charles Lee, anything?
I think I talked enough.
No, you haven't.
You did great.
We really appreciate you coming today.
Oh, I enjoyed it.
And like I told Mike was here with us earlier. We had another person that was coming, but he had an emergency and he couldn't come. And I called Mike yesterday. Coon, I'll be glad to come help you. So that's the reason here. Mr. Charles Lee, we might ask you to come back again.
Oh yeah, enjoyed it.
Patsy, anything that you know that we need to cover?
I think we've had a good session, and I really appreciate all of you helping us out, especially Mr. Charles Lee coming. It's just been so great to have you here.
Well, nice to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Good to see you.